Please welcome developer Onett. Piercen Harbut.
Piercen Harbut.
Piercen Harbut. Piercen Harbut.
Harbut.
Hold on. Test. Hello.
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 Hello. Hello.
Hello.
My name's Piercen Harbut.
Roblox username.
Onett.
Or Onett.
Both are fine. Yeah, and I'm the developer of Beast Form Simulator. Form Simulator. Okay. So originally I was asked to speak on
Just creating the perfect first-time user experience in general.
Perfect first-time user experience in general.
And what I came up with is that it really relies more on cultivating early sense of intrigue and curiosity in players fast to accomplish the three primary goals of
First-time user experience, we try to convince players to play in the first place, then to help users teach themselves how to play, finally to convince players to return.
It's a resource collection, clicker simulator game, and by simulator I mean like incremental Roblox style one, in which you build a swarm of cartoony bees to help you collect pollen from flowers and convert it into honey by shovels, stuff like that. It was inspired primarily by snow shoveling simulator.
Snow shoveling simulator. Snow shoveling simulator. Snow shoveling simulator. Snow shoveling simulator.
It was released in March of 2018.
Has about 2 billion visits and 5 million favorites. Okay, so creating intrigue begins in the initial moments of exposure to your experience. So first I want to talk about the importance of first impressions. Why are they so important? Well, obviously players are incredibly busy. Now more than ever, and it's more competitive than before on Roblox. And they've got all of these
Super polished experiences fighting for the player's time. You don't stand out from those, then your game doesn't have a chance. The way you do that, I think, on Roblox in particular, is recognizing what the audience does. On Roblox, they tend to move around as a guided by familiar genres, of course, to games that they already probably know will be worth the time investment. But at the same time, fundamentally seeking something new. You're looking for novelty, so your success in the initial moments depends on maintaining a paradoxical balance of luring players in with something familiar. While clearly demonstrating that your game is unique, it's different from all the others, and you should give it a chance, and that's difficult to do. How do you do that?
How do you do that?
How do you do that? I think in general, you need to start by trying your best to make as alluring of an experience as possible. An engaging experience with incredible gameplay means nothing if players don't join, so you have to think about the initial presentation and the style and the character, the fundamental character of your game that you're trying to express.
I think, in general for Beast Form, I think I decided not to shy away from
Stylistic decisions.
I wanted its appearance to be super overwhelmingly cute. The music as well, I wanted it to be very I wanted it to be
Touchy,
but also a little
strange at the same time, a little bit peculiar,
and even a little bit
abrasive,
but that's somewhat intentional to make it stick out in your mind.
More generally,
visceral, very basic sensation.
Strikes people fast. That's your starting point. It can be stuff like, just charm.
Wonder,
You can base off some really novel mechanic, fear, or just absurd or strange situations.
those are the kind of visceral things I'm talking about.
So, an important point I want to make is that I think you're trying to intrigue players to your game with that first impression, more than you're necessarily trying to impress them. Like, you're trying to leave a strong impression, but not necessarily technically impress them. And I think that the truth is, most successful Roblox games are
Relatively rough around the edges.
UX that's a little counterintuitive, and the arts and video amateurs I've been talking about my game as well. Quality glitches are to be, are unexpected. That's changing as things become more polished. But these things haven't really hurt Roblox games in the past. And in fact, I think those quirks are almost for the mark of authenticity.
players are looking for something different, not a level of polish. Instead, they're looking for something a little more
Personable,
a little bit more
spontaneous, imaginative,
kind of like the games you've come up with your friends, just like on the playground growing up. So for Beast Form, how do I try to intrigue players? I think it relies on kind of this sense of
deceptive familiarity.
I wanted the game to be familiar to get those hordes from the like snow shoveling simulator over to my game. I wanted to signal that they already knew what it was about. So it's familiar in that sense with the name simulator. But also with the theme. I think bees and bears.
They're super cute, they're approachable, they kind of transcend cultures, and so I wanted that to be familiar.
The deceptive part is more about how I think what really keeps people at Beast Form, keeps bringing people in, is originality and hidden complexities and undertones. Those are what really more substantial about it. If you were successful at intriguing people to join your game, then I think you have to keep the momentum of that intrigue going, and you can never let that flame burn out. Because once it's burned out, they've got so many other options, they'll probably never come back. On a larger scale, I just wanted Beast Form to have a very structured feel, so I had these gated zones. To always have something just around the bend.
Something just around the bend.
It's not overwhelming because the gates are kind of your
Primary objective.
You have stuff within each zone that are kind of
Side objectives.
but that guidance, that structure, I think is important for not blowing out that flame of curiosity, because otherwise it can be
A little overwhelming.
So essentially, your goal in this initial first impression stage, when they first load in, is just to make players curious, not to overload them with information.
Overload them with information.
And I think for that reason, I tried to keep the core game loop as intuitive and nearly self-explanatory as possible. So, like when you load in, there's an arrow that takes you to your hive. It says go to the fields and collect some pollen and come back and convert it to honey. Right now, you're just establishing like a that they'll overcome and compare progression against. You'll iterate on that later on. You'll build upon it, but you need to start basically as simple as possible, as I'm saying. The goal is to make players immediately curious about this apparent playground of gameplay potential. I want the feeling of when you walk into an amusement park. And you're seeing rides off in the distance and landmarks from different zones, and that gets you curious. That to me is intriguing.
So if they loaded in and you've intrigued them enough, the next step is to to help them learn how to play. And in these form, I think, like I said, it doesn't have much of a
tutorial. You're kind of just bombarded with a slideshow of information when you first load in that most people don't even look at. But still, they're capable of learning how to play, and I think that's because it uses the player's own curiosity to kind of guide them around an exploratory process that feels like the natural part of gameplay. It doesn't feel like you're being lectured to or having to memorize a bunch of stuff. And I think this style of learning, it's more fun because you don't really feel like you're learning, you're just doing it. And it also establishes kind of foundational trust between players and developers. I think the developer is putting trust into the player to figure things out on their own and at a pace that's comfortable for them. And if that works, then the player knows that they're in good hands. This is a designer that knows what they're doing.
Having a starting zone that is open.
But it's intentionally designed and simple so that players kind of stumble upon things in an order that makes sense. And for example, the shops you should access first and the NPCs you should access first. They're placed closer with more sightline. And like the flower fields that you first go to, they begin with mostly simple white flowers. They're the basic flowers. Singular ones, but scattered throughout them is like double flowers and some colored ones. So as players are digging around, they can start to see for themselves that if I dig over here, I'm making more, and the concept of pod multiplier starts to they become familiar with it. And as you're digging, sometimes like little leaves pop out in certain places, and if you dig around the leaves, then you might be rewarded with something like this street token. And the items aren't explained to you other than a very short description in the egg menu. But that's how players are introduced to concepts to mechanics like leveling up your bees and bee stats and stuff. Once you get a little bolder and venture out a little bit more, then like you get ambushed by a ladybug, but it's not very threatening. Ladybug. And he starts defending you right away, and that eases you into combat. In general though, this type of space, I think, it's designed so that players can't make any permanent mistakes, and as they become familiar with what you've introduced to them, they themselves get a little bolder, they themselves venture out a little bit more, do a little more exploring, and then they learn something a little more complicated. To help them through this process, I like to place little rewards all around the map to different types of bees, like these royal jelly tokens are what they use to transform your bees into better or rare ones. They're placed as rewards for hobbies or just incentives for exploration to make traveling around more meaningful, but also to steer players to locations that they otherwise wouldn't have gone to. With those sightlines in mind, they're very visible from the start as well. And they themselves build a sense of anticipation. You see them behind the gate and you realize if I could just get this many of these, I could get all of these little tokens that I clearly see in the distance. That gets the
process of gameplay actually evolving and getting revealed to you creates a sensation as you progress of completing a puzzle, seeing the cohesive whole of what this game is. And at the same time, it also it also shows how the game will qualitatively transform, or evolve, but yeah, shift and transform. Like the core game loops, for example, like
just collecting cool fields. First it shows just you, mostly with your shell, and maybe a few basic bees that you're doing most of the work, and then later on, and then the middles that are about collecting the ability tokens of your bees and stuff that go to players, and your shell as an agent for them. And then there, the process of collecting tokens becomes trivialized, and then it's more about positioning on the field or higher level balancing of consumables. And even further than that, as you start to type, they analyze. It can be about popping bubbles or flames or something. And the point is that what you're actually doing out in the field is morphing. It's not just more of the same as you progress. It's not just that you're skilled up. And I think you need those types of shifts to keep an experience feeling spontaneous. Keep it alive. Yeah, and having increased complexity is a whole in itself. It feels very good once you internalize something that feels so chaotic at first, or so good at chaos. That's an accomplishment. It makes you proud of what you've done, and proud of the game if it has a lot of depth to it. You become more loyal to the game.
But so the key point really that I'm trying to make is that you have to demonstrate within that first session that there's more to that first session that applies to mechanics. I think there's a lot of games, for example, that after 5 or 6 hours they turn into really engaging experiences, amazing game loops, but no one ever get to that point, and that's where they fall flat. So proving that the game will continue to surprise you and subvert your expectations. You can do this with stuff like just randomized events in these form. Sometimes it turns nighttime, you chase a firefly, sometimes there's a money storm, and you just run around collecting a bunch of tokens all of a sudden. And then stuff like Easter eggs, like just little mazes around the map, or strange bosses, and abrupt shifts in music and tone, things that catch people off guard, but keep the realm of possibility in your game involved. Because if that starts to shrink down, then that's when they move on to the next one. There is no more novelty to decipher. So at least I was constantly trying to balance, I don't want to deviate too far from what people are familiar with, but I want to morph it and stretch it in ways that they didn't even know they would enjoy, and just throw things out there sometimes and see what sticks. And I think that kind of ties back towards that spontaneity that is kind of just featured in Roblox in general. I think, never knowing what you're in for, because it was just some random person, just a random kid that made the experience, is part of why people continue to jump into experiences. And for me, I just wanted to kind of stretch that out over something that would last weeks or months. So, in conclusion, why is Beastform successful in those initial sessions? I think it's exactly because of this. It gets players curious and keeps that going. It uses it from the start, like the style, the icon. I wanted to have something about it that people couldn't quite figure out, and that draws them in to explore and try to make sense of it. And during that exploration, they're learning how to play, getting familiar with the loops, and during that teaching process, just surprising them a little bit, demonstrating that the game will qualitatively evolve so that they'll want to continue to explore long into future sessions. And this is something that I obviously applies to Beastform, but I think it applies to game design in general, especially anything with world building, anything when you want players to have a real commitment to your experience.
So thanks for listening to Game Design Talk.